A lot, Davor. Thanks to every one of you. I think that we are having a very interesting discussion today, and I welcome very warmly my colleagues from the national parliaments. I would just start with a couple of general remarks on what the first speaker has said, in particular Mr. Rudischhauser. It's true, it was a big moment in New York, what we were witnessing. But yes, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is an ambitious agenda. Now it's all about implementation. And I can agree with the colleague from Lithuania and also from Ms. Padoni from Italy. A good text is not enough. And we have to make sure that we don't stop to words, but words have to become action right now. So it's about resources. And in these terms, of course, the Addis Ababa outcome was disappointing for us. In a way that we need more resources, and that's and that's why we want to see the real commitment of the governments in order to reach this ambitious goal. We had a very interesting event in New York, hosted by the Commission, about domestic resource mobilization, which is an important part in this story. Collect more and spend better was the name of the event and of the staff working document of the Commission, which of course passes through some serious efforts to tackle tax evasion and avoidance in developing countries, as we all know. So what about of course, the difference between the MDGs and the new SDGs, which is the issue we are facing in the first panel? Well, the first point is about the universality of the new framework that was mentioned by many of you. It is an essential departure from the approach of the MDGs. And that's why it's very important what was underlined. Now these goals apply to all our member states as well. That means that, of course, we have and we need a sound EU implementation strategy. And we've been exchanging views with Vice President Timmermans and Commissioner Mimica on this to see how it will work. To what extent it will take place. The monitoring mechanism, for example, will take place at a national level, which involves our colleagues in the national parliament, and to what extent it will take place at a European level. That will, of course, we will want to see an important role for this parliament as well in that monitoring process. And then, of course, we will have to check the consistency of our European policies, both internal and external, with this new agenda and its goals. That means that we will need to make changes in order to align to these goals. High Representative Mogherini was saying the coherence of our internal policy is the only way to strengthen our external policies. So it's about policy coherence for sustainable development, as my colleague Maria said before. It's about the coherence of our fiscal policies. It's about, of course, what was mentioned before. What about conflict minerals, for example? What about the fact that we have a problem, a huge problem of inequalities, which is one of the root causes of migration that was also mentioned. And in order to face these issues, we have to maintain the integrated approach. It is of utmost importance of maintaining and preserving the integrated approach of the new agenda that took eradication of poverty together with the three dimensions of sustainable development: environmental, economic and social. So we don't want to see governments cherry-picking some goals and deciding to focus on some goals and not on others. This is a very important part. Either we move on every one of the 17 new goals, or we're going to affect the whole implementation. And then, as you all know, the UN Statistical Commission is now working on a set of indicators. The discussion will be crucial. It is taking place at a technical level, but of course it is a political discussion. How to make, for example, how can we measure inequalities? How can we measure corruption? How can we measure inequalities in a way that we make sure that nobody is left behind? So I think that with the MDGs we have done important progresses. Davor mentioned some of them before, also other colleagues did. Yes, but too often those progresses were not equally distributed among different parts of society, starting from the most vulnerables. So that's why I think that, just to conclude, And yesterday, the Nobel Prize was given to somebody who has researched a lot on poverty and, of course, inequalities as well. So that's important, I think. So just to end, it's about an inclusive approach because, of course, we will all be ambassadors of these new goals. National members of the Parliament, European members, institutions in general, civil society organizations, NGOs, and citizens as well. So we can only manage to do implementation of these goals and to reach this goal if we work in an inclusive approach. And to end, I think that really it's important for us to work together. Thanks for the contribution of the colleague from Luxembourg. We should all, I think, and I talk to my Italian colleagues in my language for a second, è veramente importante che...
It's very important that we cooperate better among ourselves. We're all concerned that outside our institutions, these goals are not being talked about enough. And we need to ensure that they get on the political agenda in our own countries. So I think we should work more closely together to do that.
For the